Welcome to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. Here are your hosts, the radio vagabond Palabo and TBEX CEO Rick Calvert.
Welcome to the second half of Travel Matters, where we focus on the quote-unquote TBEX survivors who were actually in Sicily as the whole thing unfolded and everybody were told to get out of the country right now.
It was a pretty amazing experience for all of them to be in this beautiful place, and a lot of them to all be together at the same time at a dinner, which we were calling the Last Supper.
Yeah.
And be told, get out of the country right now. The country's going on lockdown. And so we'll continue that, hearing their stories.
Yeah, and just to recap, this was TBEX was already rescheduled or postponed at that time. So you didn't end up going. You were back in California, and you didn't go.
I couldn't go.
No, you couldn't. You couldn't even go. No, that's right.
So we had made the decision about a week before. I'm sorry that my timeline isn't 100% certain, but about 10 days before is when we said we have to reschedule the event. Mm-hmm. And shortly thereafter, the president announced that it's a level 4 travel warning to Italy. You can't go. But several of these, all of these people, the TBEX survivors from the U.S., had already left. They were already in Europe or on their way to Europe, and Europeans didn't have the restrictions that we had. So that's how this group of folks that we're talking to ended up being there.
And we've got an interesting group of content creators lined up for this episode. We're going back to the apartment in New York. We spoke to Jason Rupp in the latest episode, and today we're speaking to his mother, who's also a travel writer, Carla Rupp. She's in the apartment with Jason, but in another room. So we're having her on to hear her experience from her trip to Catania.
And we'll also have Doro Staub. And Doro has an interesting blog called missmove.ch, where she writes about cycling in Italy. And Doro is actually still in Aci Castello, which is right next to Catania in Sicily. So she's there for the duration of the lockdown. And
then we're going to Budapest to speak with Nathan and Sarah from Live, Dream, Discover. The blog, they're also travel writers, and they are full-time nomads, so they didn't have a home to go to, so they decided to go to Budapest, and we'll speak to them later in this episode.
And our final guest this episode will be Alex Kalamanis from Wanderlust Marriage. And Alex will be joining us from Washington, D.C., and again, has a interesting story because his wife works for the FDA, and she told him before he left, hey, maybe it's not the best idea. Mm-hmm. And so he'll tell us that story.
Yeah, and now all she's saying is, I told you so. All this and much more in this episode of Travel Matters. Welcome.
Our first guest is Doro Staub. And Doro was planning to attend TBEX in Catania. She was also, as everybody else we're speaking to, part of the group we dubbed the TBEX survivors. And Doro is the last attendee that we know of who is still in Catania. And we're going to find out why she's still there and how long Doro was planning to be in Sicily to begin with.
Yeah, Doro, can you answer that question? Why are you still in Sicily?
I'm still here because I couldn't decide where to go. When there was the lockdown, I just had the choice to go back to Switzerland, and I knew it would be about the same as in Italy. Mm-hmm. And I could have gone to my partner who is living near Milano.
Yeah.
Oh.
That would be worse.
That'd be worse
than in Sicily. So I decided to stay here in Sicily because it was quite quite normal here. So I decided to stay here.
And it's a beautiful place to be stuck if you're going to be stuck somewhere.
Yes, really. No, I was also very lucky to find a good apartment, and I'm a little outside of Catania, and I stay very well here.
Were you planning, Doro, to be in Sicily for a long time originally, or you just kind of made the best of it when the lockdown went into place?
No, I just planned to. I'm here with my bicycle, and I plan to do a little trip in Sicily because I had already assignments for articles to write. So I wanted to do my research here, and I had planned some interviews with the director of a museum and so on. And so I plan to be here about 1 month, not more. So I don't know how long it takes now to leave Sicily.
Yeah, none of us know yet.
Yes.
And when you're mentioning the bicycle, that's the theme of your blog, missmove.ch. It's a blog in German, but it's all about driving a bicycle around.
Yes, it's about cycling in Italy. It's really only Italy and only with the bicycle.
Oh.
Yes. So I had to be here with my bicycle.
How long have you been doing this, writing about cycling in Italy, Doro?
It's the 5th year now.
Wow.
Yeah, I almost live on my bicycle in Italy. So this is really my work now.
I know that cycling in Italy is like a really big deal for cyclists all over the world, and has been for a really long time, but that's about all I know. My extent of cycling is a movie many, many years ago that you probably know, most people don't, called Breaking Away.
Yes.
Have you heard of this, Pale?
I can't say that I know that. No, I haven't.
It's a great movie. So it's this guy in high school in Indiana, and he meets this Italian girl that he wants to date. Or this girl that he wants to impress, and he pretends to be Italian, and he's a cyclist, but he's really from Indiana. So he tells her that he's Italian when really he's local.
Dora, when did you come to Catania?
Just like about 2 days before there was this wonderful hike and bike trip.
Yeah.
Well, I would say about 3 days before the convention should have started.
Yeah.
And one of our sponsors was doing that hike and bike trip.
Yes. Wow. Yes. I'm so lucky I could join this trip. It was really the 2 days before the lockdown. So we were so lucky to join this trip. It was 1 day of hiking and another day of cycling with an e-bike in the southeast of Sicily. So it was with Etna Bike Tours and Sicily by Nature, and that was really great. So it was just worth coming to Sicily just for this trip.
After everybody started to leave and the lockdown was in effect and it became worse, did it become very, very quiet all of a sudden?
So now I have no contact. I'm just isolated in my apartment as everybody is. But at the beginning, it was quite easy to walk around in the city, and it was quite relaxed at the beginning. But then they decided to close everything, and I couldn't even go for a walk or jogging. And so now it's the 4th week now, and I can feel a little resistance, let's say. So people getting nervous now because they cannot move.
Yeah, we're hearing that people want to get out of their house now in Italy, right?
Yes, and there's no decision of the government, because now the lockdown would have been until the 3rd of April, and so this was the day before yesterday, and there's no decision for when it would end. So we don't know for how many weeks we will be in the houses. So this is quite difficult also for everybody who's making money with a shop or car or. So for me, it's easy. I'm just here and working on my computer. But I know for the local people, it's really, really hard.
They didn't even put a new date?
No. There are some regions, they decided, I heard of the 20th, I heard of the 13th, and I've heard of the 12th. And I know of Emilia-Romagna would be on the 13th now. But I know of persons, they're beginning to work tomorrow. But actually the lockdown is still going on. So it's quite confusing and nobody understands what's happening now.
And you have no idea how long time you're going to be there?
No. But I'm really lucky I can be in this apartment as long as I want.
Yeah.
So.
And you speak Italian, Doro, is that right?
Yes.
So you're able to watch the news and kind of see what they say?
Yes.
When we made the decision to reschedule TBEX Catania, still the virus outbreak was mostly in the north.
Yes.
And they had a couple of cases in the south and then a couple of cases in Sicily. Can you tell us what it's like there now? Because now here in the States, the outbreak is here, we don't see the news from Italy anymore. Back then we saw the news from Italy every day. Now it's always about New York and Washington and those kind of things. What are you hearing? What's it like in Sicily now? Are there a lot of cases? Is it still much less than the north?
Sicily is about in the second half of the regions. So it's not so bad here. But there was a moment about 2 weeks after the lockdown when there was quite they were getting nervous here because there were so many people coming back from North Italy.
Yes.
Sicilians who are working in Milano and in this area coming back to Sicily and they were so scared that they are bringing the virus here.
Yeah.
But now it's not so bad.
Well, that's good news.
Seems to be under control. So if we can call that like that.
Yeah, that's good news. And what about in Rome? Is it similar there, or has the outbreak gotten bigger in Rome?
No, it's not so bad. So it's about the same as before. It's the north. It's really Lombardia, Emilia-Romagna. They are the worst cases there.
So the lockdown is definitely working, even though people are tired of it. It's definitely stopped it from getting worse in other parts of the country.
Actually, I'm not so sure if it really works, but
okay.
I cannot say what would have happened without the lockdown. But
yeah,
I cannot see flatten the curve very much after 4 weeks of a lockdown. But so I'm not a specialist.
I understand.
We heard about the Italian way in the previous episode. The Italians are having a mentality of helping each other. Is that something you feel in Sicily?
The only thing I see is my host bringing me bread and lemon and oranges.
That's a good example.
I'm really lucky with her. She's really a wonderful person. And but I don't speak to anybody here. I have only contact with my friends.
No.
And I know they are helping each other, but it's the same in Switzerland. I guess it's the same in the States. No?
That's so much different, Doro, your experience than Jason, who got kicked out of his Airbnb.
Yes, I heard of that. That's really. It depends on the persons at the end. But I'm sure the host was just afraid. He was scared.
Yeah.
So this explains the reaction,
exactly.
I guess.
Well, Doro, stay safe, and I hope that you will still be there or will come back when TBEX Europe is finally on in Catania. I can't wait to go and experience Sicily and meet you in person. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Same to you. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Doro.
You're listening to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX.
And Rick, you mentioned Jason. That was, of course, Jason Rupp that we spoke to on the last episode. He was also in Sicily and also one of the TBEX survivors. But what was special about Jason's story is before coming to Sicily, he was actually in Wuhan briefly, only one day in November. And then now he's in New York. And we have Carla on the line now. Carla, you're Jason's mom, and you're actually in New York with Jason. Well, sort of, because
Yes.
you're keeping a good distance from each other. You're not giving him any mom hugs as much as you used to.
None. No, but I'm enjoying cooking food for us at home to keep well, and in making vegetables and fruit dishes and drinks.
Yeah.
And we're doing okay.
But Carla, are you able to eat at the same table or
Oh no,
on each end? No.
we don't eat at the same. Let's see. He eats in my bedroom. I bring a folding chair to the hallway facing his bedroom, and then I eat the food with him at least 10, 15 feet away.
Oh my God.
He's in his bed. And
Wow.
right, yeah. Social distancing at home.
Yeah.
So you guys are together but separate.
Yes.
So Carla, you were in Catania too, because you and Jason had planned to do this trip together, right?
Yes, of course. And we were there together, and we had some wonderful days there. Even after the lockdown, we even though we left when the apartment was finished, we paid for, which was after most people left already. And as Dora said, it is a very beautiful city, and we were able to leave to walk to small groceries within walking distance of our apartment. Hmm.
There's so much fresh food there, as Italy is typical.
It's much nicer than here.
Oh, yeah.
I just have really good memories of the small grocers, which had the most incredible food, fresh produce of all kinds. So I made delicious meals in our apartment in Catania.
Yeah, and I've met you and Jason many times at TBEXs around the world, and maybe we should just introduce what it is that you do, because it's kind of special that you're both doing travel content.
Well, lately I've been guest blogging for other people's blogs. I had quite a lot of stories at Never Stop Traveling, a wonderful journalist, Jim Ferry, who also is part of TBEX. And I've been a journalist for over 30 years, and mostly in newspapers, and way back in the beginning in television in Kansas City, and freelancing. I've done quite a variety of assignments over the years.
So who started travel writing first then, Carla, you or Jason?
Oh, I did.
Okay.
And then we would work on some stories together. And then all of a sudden his YouTube just blossomed.
Yeah.
And I'm even in some of them. Our funniest was when after the TBEX, one of them that I'm in was we did a beer soaking on one of our fam trips. After.
Was that in Czech Republic?
Yeah, that was so fun.
Yeah, that's a Czech thing, the beer spa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've also been in some of his videos in other countries, and he kind of accidentally fell into this subspecialty of barber and massages, and at times I've done the filming for him on some of them.
Oh.
But often he holds his arm out and does his own filming.
Yep.
I'm co-producer, in fact, because I help so much.
So, Carla, I'm curious what the experience was like for you there, because I know you were looking forward to this trip to Sicily for so long. You knew that TBEX had been rescheduled. You and Jason went anyway.
Yes.
And again, we still had some activities for people, but things just changed so quickly while you were there.
Extremely quickly, yes.
Were you ever scared or just, making the best of it? Explain that part from, how you felt while you were there.
Well, I guess I was making the best for it. I'm scared now in New York City.
Yep.
That's why I'm staying home because of the media and all the statistics are very scary. I'm more scary now than when I was in Sicily. It was quite a shock at the dinner. When we were having this wonderful dinner at the Quiet Restaurant, named the Quiet Restaurant, and all the delicious food going around, and then all of a sudden, it's the first time I'm meeting everybody, and then it's over because of the Prime Minister's announcement that things would close the next evening.
Yeah, that's the dinner that Jason was talking about, where you were around 17, 18 people there, and all of a sudden everybody was on their phones trying to see if they could find a plane ticket or a way to get out of Sicily or out of Italy.
Right, yeah. I want to say that I was able to make it in time to meet this wonderful day tour to Metello. It's just a short drive, and it's apparently one of many, many beautiful towns that can be day trips from Catania.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex was there too, so he'll remember that as well.
Yeah, and Alex is. We're talking to Alex in a few minutes. You mentioned that you were in New York and you're scared to be in New York. You were felt more safe in Sicily.
Yes.
Are you having regrets that you didn't say like Doro did, that you would still be in lockdown in Sicily instead of in New York?
I feel mixed because it's good to be at home in my own apartment and my little neighborhood here in Tribeca. I have a nice view of the river, the Hudson River, and sunsets, my own kitchen. However, I have mixed feelings because it would also be nice as Dora to still be in Catania and then venture out for some food when you need it and cook there and look out the window or balcony and see what's going on. I feel a lot of love for the people over there. I guess I like to be there, and I'm glad I'm here. So it's not yes or no.
Thank you so much, Carla.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Thank you for sharing travel matters with your friends and followers on social media. You're the best.
Carla mentioned Alex, and we'll get to Alex in a few minutes. But first, we're going to Sarah and Nathan, Rick.
Yeah, so Sarah and Nathan have been to TBEX several times. They can maybe tell us how many times. Nathan has spoke at TBEX, and they have a blog called Live, Dream, Discover, as well as several other sites. So welcome, Sarah and Nathan.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us here.
So where are you guys right now?
We're in Budapest.
And I know because we had spoke to each other before you guys went on the trip, and I know you guys arrived in Sicily early before TBEX, but you guys had a long trip planned around this, right? TBEX was just a small part of your trip through Europe.
Yes, we arrived in the UK mid-January. I have family there. I was born there. So we spent a few weeks in the UK and doing some house sitting and visiting friends and family. Then we popped over to Berlin for 1 week to visit a cousin. And we were considering going to ITB, but we didn't. Thank goodness we didn't buy tickets because that got canceled as well. But we arrived in Sicily. We flew into Palermo on, was it February 23rd?
Yeah.
And we hired a car and started our journey. And our plans were to continue. We were going to stay in Sicily for at least a month, maybe up to 6 weeks. And then from there, we were going to travel other parts of Europe.
I did not know you were born in the UK, Sarah.
Yes. Yeah, I lived there till I was 11, so I've still got a lot of connections there. I go back every couple of years.
I do not hear the British accent.
No.
No accent.
No.
Her
I
mom
lost.
still has one.
Yeah, my mom still got a very thick accent, but no, I lost mine.
So, Nathan, you shared some great videos that you took with your drone of Sicily,
Yeah,
which
more's on the way.
was making everyone more upset about not being able to be there. And I guess looking forward to coming in the future. And Sarah, we featured a picture of you on the beach with TBEX survivors
Yes.
written in the sand on our website for a little while.
Yeah, that was when we still had hope that we would be able to stay a few weeks. But we did get a little bit of a taste. We were there, how long? Almost 3 weeks, I
Yeah,
guess?
almost 3 weeks, and we got to see quite a bit of
Sicily.
Of Sicily. There was a lot more that we still wanted to explore.
We had big plans,
Yeah, we had huge plans to explore the whole of Sicily. But we spent time in Agrigento, Ragusa,
Yeah, Syracuse, Modica.
Noto.
Yeah, we explored
Catania.
quite a bit. Yeah, we did.
Please name them all. I mean, any others you left out? Were you in Palermo too, or no?
Well, no, we flew into Palermo, but we just got in a car and drove straight to Agrigento to visit the temple. What's it?
Valley of
the Temples, which was pretty cool.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to point out that you guys did arrive early. So when you got to Sicily, there was really no issue at all.
No.
And then there are these cases in the north, and then there's a quarantine in the north, but the south is still fine. And so you guys weren't kind of breaking travel bans or anything like that while you were there.
No, not at all. When we were I guess things in Italy started to, well, I don't even think in northern Italy it really had been announced yet. But when we were in the UK, China was definitely in the news. This was towards the end of January, and there was a lot of talk about the virus in China, but that was it. Then when we got to Berlin, which would have been mid-February, there started to be more talk about the northern parts of Italy being affected. But again, it seemed to be fairly contained at that time.
Yeah.
And it seemed like they were, locking it down within those small towns in northern Italy. So we felt, well, we're going to continue on to Sicily because that's the complete opposite end of the country. And so we really didn't have any fear of going there. Everything was still running normally. And there was even still some discussion that TBEX may go forward. We knew that by that point, we knew that there was a chance that it may have to be postponed. But we thought, well, we got our flight.
And we also figured, we might be able to get at least a couple weeks exploring Sicily before any actual announcements might be made.
We
had no idea it was going to turn out how it did. So.
Exactly. No, I mean, we thought that TBEX may have to be postponed, but that was about the extent of our concerns. Yeah. Other than that, we never dreamed
we weren't
what
even
was coming.
Imagining lockdowns or
no, of course, nobody
isolation,
was.
none of that.
No, and all the way up to, I think, March 7th or 8th, I was in Berlin, and I was actually considering going to Sicily, but then I decided, no, better not. And that is about the time when you got the announcement, when you were in Sicily, get out now.
Yeah.
Can you take us to where you were when you got that message, and what went through your mind and what you did?
Well, it was quite surreal because for, I guess, maybe 2 or 3 days prior to the announcement, I think it was the evening of the 9th. Wasn't it? Yeah, the evening of March 9th was the announcement that the entire country was going into lockdown. Mm-hmm. A couple of days prior to that, there had been some changes, some announcements asking people to not congregate in groups. We actually were on the same tour that Doro was on, and which was
Etna Bike Tours and Sicily by Nature, which was an amazing trip.
Oh my gosh, it was
one of our favorite trips we've done.
So amazing. It was incredible. Those people, our hosts, were so great, and it was just so beautiful. I can't say enough good things about
that. And I created a great video that I'll be pushing out and
as soon as the time's right,
mark it later on for people to go back there and try that out.
But talk about that a little bit, the Etna bike tour, because you and Doro both mentioned what a great experience it was. So I'm curious about what made it great, but also the kind of lengths they had to go to for you guys to do that tour, because they were putting some restrictions on at that point, weren't they?
Well, they were just starting to.
Yeah.
I think the fact that we were out in nature the whole time. We did go through a couple of towns by bike, but the first day was just hiking. It was like 23 kilometers, I think.
I think a 23-kilometer hike, through a canyon. It was beautiful.
Yeah, so they drove us out.
On Mount Etna?
No. It was called Etna Tours, but it wasn't an Etna tour.
The first day was actually done by Sicily by Nature.
Yeah.
And Sicily by Nature and Etna Bike Tours, they do a lot of combo trips together.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yeah, so we hiked. I'd have to look up exactly where we hiked from, but it was all through nature. So we didn't, there weren't really any issues at all, and there weren't really any major lockdowns still at that point. There was still talk about it, but it still was really, really new. But that night, because it was a one-night thing, so a 2-day and overnight, so they put us up in a lovely place. I can't remember I should have written down the name, but it was gorgeous. It was up in the hills among sort of olive groves. It was really beautiful. It was like an agriturismo place.
Yep.
And they had quite a large restaurant there. And I think that's when we first began to realize that this was getting serious, because it was a special celebration. I think it was Women's Day in Italy. And it was obvious that they had been planning to have a full house for dinner in the restaurant. But really, it was just our group. And then there was one other group of people. And other than that, the place was empty. And I think that's when we all started realizing, okay, this isn't normal.
And kind of as we were on this 2-day trip, like more and more announcements, we were kind of keeping track of things through WhatsApp. There was like a TBEX WhatsApp group that we were keeping track of things. We're looking at the news and stuff. But, for a good chunk of the day, we're out in the wilderness, without service, and we're hiking. And the second day we did 65 kilometers of
cycling,
of mountain biking. Mm-hmm. And, but we did notice we were mountain biking through one village, and we had stopped for a lunch, and we're just kind of hanging out on the curb eating our sandwiches.
And it was a ghost town. There was nobody around.
But there were a couple police officers came up to us and told us that we had to
stand further
away from each other.
Yeah.
And that's when we knew things were going to start to get more serious.
Wow.
So we were really in 2 days of absolute heavenly obliviousness to what was going on, because we were out in nature and just loving every second of it. But we were getting signs that things were taking a turn.
And then when we finally did arrive back into Catania, I think we had actually planned on going out that evening and
to the dinner the dinner that Carla had mentioned.
Yeah. And
the infamous dinner.
The infamous dinner, yes.
Dinner, where all that information came out, and then
the Last Supper.
Found out, try to get out of Sicily, and then we're like, because we were planning on staying in Sicily.
Oh yeah, we weren't planning on going anywhere, because at that point it still seemed okay. But
and then we figured, okay, everything's going to be locked down. It sounded like they're recommending we leave if we can. So that's when we made the decision to leave the country.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny looking back now, because I see Doro is still there. But we were just sort of panicked in that moment, because we got a message from Mario saying, basically, get the first flight out that you can. So we got online and we were trying to decide where to go. So we decided, we picked Budapest because we considered another flight that was going to Athens, but it was like 6 a.m. or something. And we thought, well, it was already 11 p.m. by that point, and we were exhausted after cycling 65 kilometers. So we went with Budapest because it was an evening flight, which gave us, the time to gather ourselves and get some rest. So that's why we're here in Budapest. And
we had been here before, so we knew
the city.
I mean, we obviously didn't realize everything was going to get locked down at that time everywhere else as well. So we're like, oh, well, we love Budapest. So
yeah, it was just an Italy problem at that point.
Yeah, exactly. It was an Italy problem. Exactly. So we thought, well, where do we want to go? Because we had no intentions of leaving Europe. We had a lot of work lined up and travel plans lined up. So we arrived in Budapest, and we decided we weren't asked to quarantine. We really weren't asked anything when we arrived in Budapest. But we wanted to be responsible, realizing what was happening now. It was becoming more and more clear. Well, I don't know about clear, but it was becoming more and more real. And so we self-quarantined we planned, okay, we'll get an apartment for 2 weeks and we'll self-quarantine. But at that time in Budapest, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Budapest. Yeah. I'm sure you've both been here. Yeah. So it's a bit of a party city, and
it is, yes. Simple bar.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what, Rick? We were staying right next door to that ruin bar, and right above the place called Caravan, which is like a food truck court. And our apartment looked over those places. And so we were here in self-imposed quarantine. Yeah. And people were still partying.
Yeah, tons of people.
It was just, and we're listening to this and we're thinking, oh my gosh, what are they doing? Because we had already had a taste of what was coming.
That's exactly where I was staying as well when I was in Budapest. I really love that area.
Yeah, it's a great area.
And then so it kind of, I want to say, I guess about a week into
our isolation, maybe a week
and a half into our self-imposed isolation, then Hungary started putting restrictions in place and locking stuff down, and then so we just went from our self-isolation to an actual
so-called
real
required
isolation.
Yeah.
I've seen some reports in the news about the international community being worried about the leader of Hungary, Orban, like taking more power, using this crisis as an opportunity to, take more power, and even some people have said become a dictator or something.
Yeah, we've been reading that too.
What are you guys hearing there on the ground? Is the news different in Hungary? Are people worried?
Yeah, absolutely, they are.
We don't speak Hungarian.
Yeah, but still, I go on and translate all of the news sites. I watch them every day. I immediately joined all of the Hungary expat groups. But quite honestly, I've had to kind of stop myself from reading them because I was getting a bit nervous, to tell you the truth. People like to get very dramatic and get very political. And I'm sure there is some truth to it, but you just don't know how much truth there is. And I have to say, there are times when I do feel a little bit nervous about being here as a foreigner. But who knows what's going to happen. But yes, there definitely is talk on the expat groups and even in some news articles. But I think those news articles are going to get squashed. I don't think you're going to be reading about them too much anymore.
Well, and for an example, when we first got here and we self-isolated for 2 weeks, at the end of that 2 weeks, we had to move on to a new Airbnb. And so we had booked an Airbnb for an additional week.
Yeah, because we still weren't sure where we were going.
Yeah, we weren't sure what was going to happen. And then we found out a day before we were supposed to go to the new Airbnb that they said we couldn't go.
Yeah, so it was
we were foreigners.
Similar to what Carla was saying.
Yeah, they did not want
panicked.
us there. They panicked and said, "Sorry, we can't rent the place to you." So then we had to,
we had to rush and
find
something
place.
else. So we're now in a different apartment, which it's fabulous. It's it's big and bright and airy, and the owners are amazing. The hosts have been really incredible, because we're nomadic. We don't really technically have a home to go back to. So we had to make the decision.
Same here.
Yeah, right? So we had to make the decision, what do we do? Nathan is American. I'm Canadian. So, very quickly we were out of options, because I can't go into the US and he can't go into Canada. And even if we did, we don't have a home there ourselves. So we would not only have to separate and go into different countries, but we'd have to then stay with family and put them at risk. It's a very,
and we don't really feel like getting on a plane right
now. No, exactly.
No.
We don't think that flying home is the most responsible thing to do.
I'm totally with you there. When I came here to Cape Town, the Danish government, they sent out a message: all Danish people come home now. And I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. Why would I fly halfway around the world? And I don't. Denmark was a lot harder hit than South Africa, and I don't have a home to go home to. And people gave me a lot of grief, saying, "Oh, you're so irresponsible." But no, I'm nomadic. So why would I?
Exactly.
Why would I go? I feel safe here. So yeah, I'm staying here for the duration, and I'm definitely not getting on any long flights right now.
No, I completely understand. It's good to hear someone else that understands, because there was a time where I was getting quite anxious and upset because I was having people saying, "What are you doing? Get out of the country. You're not a resident there. You need to go back to your own country." And this is just people online, not people here that we've met.
I think Sarah, that's just people who don't understand your life in general.
Exactly.
And you guys and Pally are in the same have the same type of life where you're nomadic, and a lot of travel bloggers are that way, and normal people just don't understand that.
They don't. They don't. And of course, in turn, we understand that they don't understand. Our situation is not the norm.
I even made a T-shirt that says "Homeless by Choice."
Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I don't know, have you got anything to add? Some good suggestions, some advice for people?
Well, as far as our experience in Sicily, definitely when this is over, go.
Oh yeah, it was
so
beyond
beautiful.
expectations.
Yeah. And as far as advice for what's happening now, I have to say that in a way, Nathan and I, we've discussed it, and we feel a little blessed because of our lifestyle choice. I feel that we're handling this actually a lot better than a lot of our friends and family, because our life hasn't changed as much as theirs. We're used to being just the two of us in a strange place, holed up in an apartment sometimes for weeks, just working at the computer, hardly leaving, hardly seeing anybody. So I feel like we've got it actually a bit easier than people that are used to going out every day to work and every day to meet friends and family.
Yeah, we're used to not being with our friends and family. So.
But I would say just, try and stay connected and try and stay positive and try and get yourself into a daily routine to get through this.
Yeah, the modern technology right now is just, I think it's saving everybody mentally.
Yeah.
To be able to still video and communicate with their friends and family online.
Well, that's one thing we're doing, actually. We've started a virtual exercise, like a boot camp virtually, because Nathan's a personal trainer. So that's been really fun. We've got people from all over the world that join in every day and just do a 30-minute little exercise session and chat and talk about how they're doing.
And everybody kind of helps support each other.
And the thing with people all of a sudden working out of their kitchen table, I'm kind of like, welcome to my world. That's what
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let me know if you need any good advice on how to get organized and do a daily routine with working
Right.
from wherever you are. And now it just happened to be people staying at home.
Well, then actually, we're just in the middle of writing a collaborative post for our site, because obviously we don't want to be promoting travel at the moment. And it's all about suggestions from other nomads and people like ourselves, suggesting how to get through this time, resources and tips and ideas. So that's helping as well. It's helping us to help others, which I think is good for our sanity as well.
So, Nathan, I'm curious how your Star Trek Next Generation trivia event went.
It was really good. I initially, when I decided to start it, I think initially I just did it for myself because
It was all for him.
I'm a huge Next Generation fan, probably too much of a fan. But I got a good group. I think there was about 10 of us that participated in the trivia. And I do have to say, I did find one other person who's actually a travel blogger as well.
Chris Bach.
Yeah. Who knows probably almost as much about the Next Generation as I do. And he's a huge fan as well.
So I tried to join that. I just got busy. I wasn't able to, because I used to go watch that every week at a friend's house. About 5 of us would sit and watch Next Generation.
Rick, for 6 years now, I have gone to sleep to that series for 6 years. That's Nathan's bedtime.
Yeah, I've watched The Next Generation. I start from episode 1 and I go through all 7 seasons. I've been doing that, and I just started right before I go to bed. And I have done that for the last, I want to say, 12 to 13 years. Yep. And then once I get to the end, I just start over again.
Wow.
So I know quite a bit now, too. I'm a Trekkie, apparently.
Unwillingly.
Sarah, that is true love.
Right? Isn't it, Rick? I agree.
It only took me 6 years to make her become a fan.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. And stay safe there in Budapest.
You guys too. You stay safe all over the world, everybody.
And we will see you soon. Sometime soon, we will see you in Sicily.
Oh, of course.
Oh, absolutely you will. Couldn't keep us away.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Sarah.
You're listening to Travel Matters, sharing all the latest news, trends, and tips for you, and interviewing the movers and shakers in the travel creative ecosystem.
And for our last guest in this episode, we have Alex from Wanderlust Marriage. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Polly. Hi, Rick.
Welcome, Alex.
Great to be here with you guys. Thank you.
So, Alex, you were also one of the quote-unquote TBEX survivors. You were also in Sicily.
Yes, I was. I was among about 50 of us that still went to Sicily. I was planning to spend a few weeks there. And
I heard a rumor that your wife actually said maybe you shouldn't go.
Yeah, she sure did, and she's more knowledgeable about this than many of us. She's a scientist at the FDA, so has a lot of connections in the health industry. And shortly before I left, she said, I'm really worried about this. I'm worried that, if you go, I may not see you for months, because there could be a situation. She got word that the situation of lockdowns could really spread. To me, that just seemed unfathomable, because we haven't seen anything like this in our lifetimes. This is the biggest crisis that we've the planet's faced since World War II. And at the time, I just when she said that, I said, that's ridiculous. And sure enough, I found myself trying to get home amid a 30-day travel ban with Europe and all the craziness that ensued.
Yeah.
Well, most of us don't have a scientist to consult in our house there, Alex.
So the thing of it is that I was looking at the statistics coming out of China, and there was only a 2% death rate. So I said, well, chances are I'm not going to get it. And if I do get it, then chances are I'll be fine. I didn't realize I could also be an asymptomatic carrier. That wasn't fully explained to me. So I was definitely probably also armed with a heavy dose of denial. But I'll say this, I left home on March 2nd. And when I left, I got in the Uber to go to IAD. I was flying to Paris first. I had a few things lined up. I was covering a hotel and a couple Fat Tire tours. I know Fat Tire, they're one of the TBEX sponsors. And I only found out TBEX was canceled while I was in that Uber to IAD. So, I mean, the misfortune happened as soon as I stepped out the door. But it was only then that I found out. So, I mean, I was definitely quite stressed. I got to IAD and I was happy to use my priority pass to get to the lounge. And I don't normally I wait till I get on the airplane to drink alcohol, maybe to have some wines and beers. But I was happy I got in the lounge and I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely going to have some red wine here because, the conference is canceled. Everyone was still trying to figure out because I know they were organizing the FAMs that weekend. Even though there was a situation in the north, I left on a Monday the 2nd. I know on Friday, I mean, they were sort of finalizing the FAM trips, and I had been looking forward to the FAM going out to Trapani, and there was a cooking class that was going to be included among a lot of other great things to cover on that trip. And I mean, just finding out in the Uber, I said, well, I was just hopeful also because my wife was planning to come. She still had a ticket. At that point, the flight had not been canceled. She was meant to meet me in northern Italy, March 27th, and we were going to celebrate our 15-year wedding anniversary. So that was looking like it was going to need to be changed. But at that point, the north of Italy had not even locked down yet. By the time I arrived in Europe, I arrived in Paris on March 3rd.
Yeah, it's important that people realize when you left, we're teasing you because, your wife's telling you, I told you so. But yeah, there were no travel bans to the part of the world that you were going, or even a hint that would happen. And it just escalated so quickly that it would have been impossible to know that. So
and it's easy to knowing what we know now to look back and said, okay, maybe that's not the smartest decision. But I made similar decisions, and I was in Denmark at the time, and even though I knew that ITB in Berlin was canceled, I got on the plane and I thought, let me go to Berlin. Yeah, it's okay.
There were still other events happening, right, Pally?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I went to a meetup, a travel massive meetup. Everything else seemed quite normal.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly. Everything escalated so fast.
Yeah.
I mean, ITB was canceled, so there was so much chatter about whether TBEX would be canceled as well, and ultimately it was. But I mean, everything escalated so fast, and it's a great point. Looking back, we could say, "Oh, that was silly," but when there's no bans at the time, and then the flights are still going, and then there's other things to look forward to. So I'm glad to hear that from you, Paule, that you were doing similar things. That you still went to Berlin despite ITB being canceled.
He almost went to Catania. It was not until he got to Berlin that he realized I can't go to Catania now.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. I heard that earlier, and my flight to Catania from Paris was March 8th, and the lockdown in the north happened on the 7th. So I was definitely pretty apprehensive about getting on the airplane to Catania, because then I started to think like, all right, this might, if they've locked down these parts in the north, that may happen in the south. But I said, at the moment, it's fine. The flight's still going. I have a hotel paid for. Paris was great, but I had been there for 5 days, and Paris is an expensive city. So at that point, I would have been losing money to have not gotten on the flight to Catania, given given I had a booking that was already prepaid for 6 nights in Catania. So that was then my rationale that I still got on the airplane to go to Catania, and that there were still day trips being planned, and I got one in. So yeah, I arrived on Sunday, and we did. There was a great day trip that Wishing Sicily did to Militello on the 9th, and then that night the lockdown was announced. The nationwide lockdown was announced.
Were you at the dinner that we're calling the Last Supper with the other TBEX attendees?
I was at that dinner, and that was a funny story because I had done the day tour and I was pretty tired from all of the traveling I had done, and I had been cycling around Paris on the Saturday on a tour. So I took a nap. That dinner started at 8:30. I had been planning to get to the dinner at 8:30. I set my alarm to wake up at like 8 o'clock, but I set it for 8 a.m. and not 8 p.m. And I woke up and it was like 9:20. And I was like, oh, crap. And luckily, I was staying only 5 minutes from where the dinner was happening. But I hurried out the door. I showed up 50 minutes late and half asleep. And I sit down and there's all this food, seafood, pasta. And Carla's sitting across. I'm like, I'm sorry I'm late. I really wanted to be here on time. I get there. Mario's quiet. He's just got his earpiece in, listening to the news, and the prime minister looking very concerned. The atmosphere was already a little tense, but we still didn't get the news at that moment. Mario was just being very quiet with the earpiece in, and some of the people at the table. Actually, Carla, I've met her before at previous TBEXs, and Jason came later. Some of the people at the table I had met earlier in the day on the day trip to Militello, and then some of the people sitting near me, I was just meeting half asleep, and it was definitely a surreal moment. Again, part of the comedy of errors that happened during my trip to show up to that dinner very late. And I'm definitely missing some of the best part because by the time I got there, it was already tense moments with Mario on the phone. But the food was delightful. So that was a surreal scene to have all this food coming and great company, and then Mario says, "Hey everyone, the Prime Minister has announced a nationwide lockdown. I advise you to leave Italy as soon as possible."
You know, some people don't know. In Mario's case, he's from Catania. He lives in London now. And he left right away because, although he was planning to stay for several more days and, help coordinate everything for people on the ground, he had a trip planned to Africa a couple of days after that. That was like an important trip. And that's why he left right away, because he thought, if I don't get out, then I won't be able to go to Africa. Little did he know at the time, he got back to London and then he couldn't go anywhere anyway, like so many other people.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. I did not know that he had an important trip to Africa that he had to get to. I knew he said he wanted to get home to London, but yeah, so I mean, everybody was in the dark. At first, we thought it was a Northern Italy problem, and then we thought it was an Italy problem, and then it became a global problem and something we haven't seen. And I know Pale's in Cape Town now, and he's been there a few weeks, and he's experiencing the lockdown there. And most of us, wherever we are, it's where we should be for the short term.
Yeah.
So when did you leave Italy? Did you go straight home or did you go somewhere else?
So I was still in a bit of denial. At the dinner, well, I was looking up places to go and to go for cheaply. And I was looking at Ryanair flights, and there was a Ryanair flight to Malta for 45 euros. And so I initially booked that flight to Malta to get out of Italy. still traveling with denial, still thinking like, oh, well, maybe at this point I'm thinking there is a possibility that, maybe I'm stuck somewhere for a while. But I said, hey, if I am, then Malta is not a bad place to be. And in the morning, that flight was canceled. So when that happened, I said, well, I'm just going to take the day to. And there was another blogger at the dinner who also wanted to go to Malta, and she booked a ticket to Malta as well. And so I think that was, and I had just met her. I'd spoken to her for a couple minutes, and she was like, "Oh, Malta!" And so she booked a ticket to Malta, and it was funny because I was like, "Hey, what's your name again?" And and it was just such a chaotic situation of making a plan to travel to Malta with someone that I had spoken to for literally 2 minutes. The flight was canceled in the morning. And then I said, well, I got up and I said, all right, there goes Malta. I said, well, I've got a breakfast coupon.
You could almost swim there.
Someone did suggest, oh, you could have chartered a boat.
Yeah, but it's like 50 miles or something like that.
Yeah, it was. It's not very far. So yeah, we could have. If I was an elite swimmer, then could have swam to Malta. Faced a similar type deal, but I just kind of took the day to. Initially, I woke up. The cafe across the street was still serving a delicious pistachio cream croissant and coffee, and I said, "Hey, life's going on here. It's all right." I enjoyed that. I caught up with some of the other bloggers. We took photos and had some good food. And we wound up. A few of us wound up because you couldn't. The cafes were open till 6:00. They were keeping people to do social distancing, and we were getting warned in the cafes to stay apart. But a few of us were drinking wine down at the port and hanging out, and then I think there was some grappa involved, and then we were kind of figuring out what to do next, and there was a Ryanair flight to Marseille. Someone suggested Marseille, and then the blogger I was talking about before, Laura with Explore with Laura, she was like, "I'm down for going to Marseille," and I was like, "Okay." I'm like, "I'm down for going there too." It's like warm weather, getting out of Italy, so we changed because our flight with Ryanair had been canceled to Malta. They let us book, even though the flight to Marseille was more expensive. They let us change the ticket to Marseille for free, and that decision was literally made in 5 minutes. Becky was the one that brought up. She's like, "Hey, there's a flight to Marseille," and I said, "I'm down." Laura said she was down, and we booked the ticket to go to Marseille the next day.
Yeah, there was another attendee who ended up going there as well. Alex, I don't know if you met Kemkem and Frederico.
Oh, you know what? We did not. And so they may have been on our flight and we didn't know it. Because that would have been on the 11th, because we tried to get out on the 10th. The lockdown was announced on the night of the 9th. We didn't get out on the 10th, and then we got out on the 11th. I'm not sure. They may have flown to Marseille on the 10th. I'm actually not. We did not meet those guys. I saw them in the thread. I'll be looking forward to hearing their story on the other podcast, to listen to it and to hear about how that unfolded for them. And I mean, given that they live in Spain, I guess they were able to fly to Marseille, and then it's not so far I guess maybe they got the train.
So you finally managed to get home to the U.S.?
Yeah, we ended up spending 4 days in Marseille because, again, probably in a bit of denial about the situation, thinking it was an Italy problem. We were both hoping to travel a bit, so we had booked this Airbnb. And then when France announced a nationwide lockdown, I said, then I was starting to see, okay, I could get stuck somewhere. And so I flew to Amsterdam. I used to live in Amsterdam for 3.5 years. So I said, well, if I'm going to get stuck somewhere, I want to get stuck somewhere that I've lived before. And I'm not going to, I'm going to be responsible. I'm not going to contact any friends to stay. I just booked a hotel. But in case any country made the decision, and there was a 30-day travel ban with the United States, but that was for the ban was for European citizens. Certain flights were still going for Americans, so I couldn't change my ticket online that I booked through Delta, and the phone lines were crazy. So I just wound up buying another ticket home, and I have the credit for the other flight. It wasn't so bad. It was like 377 euros last minute it was a KLM flight from that I booked through the Delta site from Amsterdam directly to Washington, D.C.
So how many times have your wife said the 4 words, "I told you so"?
It has definitely been quite a few times, and she was being pretty patient with me up until the end, and then she was very much she was at the very end when I was in Amsterdam. There was definitely some tense moments of, you need to figure out a way to get home. I said, I haven't been able to change the ticket, and so that's when I she was getting very stressed out at that point, and then that really started to stress me out as well. So I just bought another ticket home, and fortunately it all worked out that I was able to get home safely. And when I arrived, I wasn't showing any symptoms. I wasn't sure how it was going to work when I left Schiphol Airport. It was all eerie. I mean, everything was locking down. I got into Amsterdam. I guess it would have been the 15th, the night of the 15th. And at 6:00, Amsterdam had pretty much started to lock down. And so the bars and restaurants were only doing takeout. Things were closed. It was weird that people were getting there. I mean, it's a surreal moment. As I used to live in Amsterdam. I know the city well. To see travelers coming in, like scratching their heads, like there's nothing to do in Amsterdam. That's
and that's normally super crowded with tourists.
Yes,
Dave. Actually, I don't know if you guys know this, but Amsterdam has stopped all inbound tourism marketing. They completely eliminated their marketing of the tourist board for leisure travel. They're talking about over tourism. So to be in Amsterdam without it being crowded is
very different.
Yeah, unheard of.
Yeah,
it's a city that really struggles with over tourism. Absolutely. The Dutch tourism board has been figuring out ways to get people out of Amsterdam and to be going to other great places in the Netherlands, other towns in other areas. Yeah, there's so many great towns. There's so many other great places aside from Amsterdam, but people often just go with what they hear of. So that's
and there's so many. Yeah,
it's definitely a great idea because it's very burdensome. It's a small city, so with people putting apartments on short-term rental sites, and actually there was something that we struggled with when we were there was our landlady tried to kick us out, and in the Netherlands it's pretty controlled, so that's a whole long story. But eventually when we did leave, she turned because we were living in a small apartment in the center above a cafe, and after we left she turned that into a short-term B&B. So now, people are paying 150 euros a night to stay there, and then the cafe downstairs caters breakfast for people, and it was a very small place, like between the main street, Rokin, and the Kalverstraat, the shopping street near Muntplein, but a very, very central location in Amsterdam that we were living at. But yeah, it's totally surreal to go there and to just everything to be closed down and to see no people and to be like a ghost town. to get on the trains with hardly anybody on them. They really had closed pretty much everything down. The hotel I was staying in was at a DoubleTree on the wharf. 80 rooms in the hotel, only 17 of them were booked when I was there, and that number would have dropped when I left. I'm a Hilton Gold member through my Amex card, so it was easy for them to upgrade my room, and I had a breakfast included, and it was only $60 a night in Amsterdam. I was like, wow, this is a great deal. But yeah, I had friends like, what? You ate at the buffet during the pandemic? Like, you are really like giving us like a laundry list of all the things that you shouldn't do. And when I got back to my room that night, because I walked around a little bit, there was notes under the door saying that, because the first day the hotel restaurants could still serve, but then they had to, they stopped that they could only do room service and takeaway food in the hotel restaurant. So my last morning before I went to Schiphol, you called and you could tell them what food you wanted, and they just brought it to your room. So there they were. I saw the Dutch as well. I got to see 3 countries and then a fourth. Really, I've been in 4 countries during this lockdown, between Italy, France, the Netherlands, and now in the US, seeing how all these different countries have been dealing with implementing the lockdowns. Basically, I left France the night before they had instituted the lockdown in France, and I left the next day. I bought a last-minute ticket to Amsterdam via Strasbourg, because I got that for like 130 euros. Direct to Amsterdam was like 800 euros. So I mean, I left 3 countries just after they had instituted lockdowns. So it's quite a lockdown tour of Europe that I was on.
Yeah, wow. Alex, remind us again where we can find you, find your blog.
So the blog is wanderlustmarriage.com, and on Instagram, I have a handle travelguide_Alex.
Thank you. We'll make sure to put a link to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking the time, Alex, and stay safe and listen to your wife next time.
Oh, she'll love that. She definitely will. She'll definitely appreciate that. I will tell her that you guys said that. Thank you so much for having me.
Again, I'd like to say thank you to all our guests in this episode: Doris Stab, Nathan and Sarah, Carla, and Alex. Thank you so much for being guests on this podcast.
Stay safe until next time.
Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, everyone.
You've been listening to Travel Matters, the official podcast of TBEX. This episode of Travel Matters was hosted by TBEX CEO Rick Calvert and Radio Vagabond Paula Bow, and produced by radioguru.co.uk.